o'clock. Right now it's time for the big story. So Jamaican Olympic medalists Roger Stoner and Rohindra Campbell have switched their allegiance to Turkey, reportedly lured by attractive financial remunerations. Stoner, who broke the Olympic Games men's discus throw record with 70 meters in Paris last year, and Campbell, who won the bronze medal in the men's shot put, will join sprinters Jamaicans Jakes Harvey and Winston Barnes as Jamaican athletes representing Turkey. Is that the extent of the, shall we say, defection? We're going to find out much more and get the very latest on this matter from senior sports journalist, my very good friend Leighton Levy, who is on with us this morning. Good morning to you, Leighton. How you been?
Morning, Rich. I'm not too bad. At work as usual, getting an early start to the day.
All right. Yeah, man. Big up yourself, Leighton. Man, this thing has hit us like a ton of bricks, and it took us all by surprise, I suspect, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so, because, look, one of the things is that when you look at the athletes who are making the transition to Turkey, they won 50% of the medals that Jamaica won at the Paris Olympics last year. So you're kind of expecting to go into 2025, the World Championships coming up in Tokyo, to see similar performances that would then bolster what we are hoping would be a better performance on the track, because, as you know, Jamaica is in a transition phase with its sprinters. Mm-hmm. The era of the Usain Bolt and the Shelley-Ann Fraser-Pryce and Elaine Thompson eras is almost over. Elaine Thompson is nowhere to be found, and of course, Usain retired in 2017, and Shelley-Ann Fraser-Pryce is most likely in her final year of international competition.
Yes.
So with the rise of people like the Clayton twins and, Brianna Williams, Brianna Liston, who is, I don't think is going to be at the championships this year, and of course Kishane Thompson, Oblique Seville, and Akeem Blake, they are not yet, consistent medal winners. So you're expecting to go into Tokyo with the emerging sprinters being bolstered by the strong field events that we saw in Paris last year. So this came as a surprise when I broke the story last week, Sunday, mm-hmm. and then, of course, it escalated to where eventually we started to get names. I got all the names on Sunday, but, of course, as you know, Richie, we are journalists. We can't publish anything until we have absolute confirmation. I don't publish anything until I have at least 2 solid confirmations.
Okay.
So we held the names until later on in the week when the names started to emerge, because some other media houses have got involved by then, and they were able to then make confirmations that I was still in the process of making.
Okay.
And so, yes, it did come as a surprise. And it's disappointing from a personal standpoint. It's very disappointing to me, because you never want to hear of one of your local stars moving on to another country. But my grandmother always told me, if you want to understand a man's position, walk a mile in his shoes. Mm-hmm. And I put on the shoes of a lot of these athletes in the last week or so, and I came to the conclusion that while I might be, as a Jamaican, be upset or disappointed, you understand why it happened, and it's something that I hope that the relative authorities will eventually start to address, because
yes.
These issues have been long-standing. It's not just an immediate thing or a late developing thing. It's been a long-standing issue for a lot of the athletes.
Mm-hmm. Now, we mentioned Stoner and we mentioned Campbell. Is that the extent of the defection, or are there more other athletes that have joined them?
Well, subsequently, we were confirming Jaden Hibbert, of course, but 2-time World Under 20 champion, who many people believe is going to be the next triple jump star in the world. He competed at the Olympics last year with a torn meniscus in his knee and just missed out on a medal. So I think his distance was 17.61 meters. If you consider that, I right now suffering from a torn meniscus in my right knee. So I know what it's like to be able to put pressure on that. And the fact that he was able to just miss out on a medal, when he's healthy, you kind of expect that he's going to be doing great things. He jumped 17 meters 87 in his final year at Arkansas to set an NCAA outdoor record on 17:54 indoors. This is a very talented young man Jamaica will never see him perform at the senior level again when he's at his best, because he's just 20 years old. So, and of course, Wayne Pinnock, who has been the World Championship silver medalist in 2023, an Olympic silver medalist in the long jump last year in Paris. So you're looking at consistent performers, consistent medalists, and outstanding individuals in terms of their performances. Rajendra Campbell actually became the first Jamaican to ever win a shot put medal at Olympic Games when he did so in Paris last year. Yeah. And as you know, you mentioned Roger Stoner, who would have won every single Olympic game since the game started in 1896 with the throw that he threw in Paris last year. So you're looking at
top tier,
a very high quality, top tier athletes who are losing. And what the major difference is to what happened in the past, people like Jake Sarvey, Kemali Brown, and Jake Sarvey went to Turkey. Kemali Brown and Andrew Fisher went to Bahrain. You're looking at situations that are different. When those guys made the transition, Usain Bolt, Asafa Paula, Johan Blake, and Warren Weir, all those guys were at the top of the table. So it was understandable then that they would have tried to, feather their nests elsewhere. But these guys in this current phase is the largest number at any one point, and they're the very best of what we have. So that's a significant difference.
It is strongly believed that obviously the financial incentives is what might be driving these moves. Any word? I mean, I saw $500,000 up front and some other benefits being bandied about. Are those actual factual numbers?
Those are the numbers that I got, and there were numbers in the story that I published on last week, Sunday. Not Sunday gone, the week before.
Right. 500,000 US up front.
Yeah, so you get $500,000 once the transfer is complete. The transfers are not yet complete. What it is that they're in the process now, because it's a 3-year process, unless the respective federations agree to reduce the number of time. But under the World Athletics guidelines of transfer of allegiance, these athletes will not be able to compete for any individual country until 2028 of the Olympic Games, which is why Turkey signed these guys on 8-year contracts for the next 2 Olympic cycles. So they'll be able to compete on the circuit as individuals, but they won't be able to represent Jamaica, for example, at the World Championships in this year, the World Championships in 2027. So they are no longer able to represent Jamaica until they've done Turkish gear at the Los Angeles Olympics in 2028, assuming that the Olympics are not moved.
Yes. Now, Jakes Garvey and Winston Barnes, they actually went through name changes. Is there any report emerging about these Stoners and Campbells and Hibberts and Pinnocks possibly changing their names? And if so, do you know their new names?
No, I don't think. I think that's a decision I think those athletes will have to make eventually. I don't think they're keen on changing their names because they're not even going to have to be. They're going to be based in the United States. They're training. Pinnock and Hibbert are at Kansas State University training with coach Travis Gufford and, of course, assistant coach Clive Pullen, who's also a former Jamaican triple jumper. And, of course, when what's his name? Stoner is coached by the Olympic shot put champion. So they're all based in the United States.
Okay.
So, they, under the conditions, I'm told, I haven't been able to confirm this, so this is what I'm told, is that they will be able to remain in the United States and train in the United States. I think the only minimum requirement right now is that they most likely would have to obtain residences in Turkey to establish that they have they're domiciled in that country. But other than that, they're going to be remaining where they are right now, getting monthly stipends of somewhere between $6,000 and $30,000 a month. Once the transfers are complete, it's a $500,000 lump sum. And of course, if they win medals, a gold medal is $531,000. Silver $310,000, I think, and bronze is $130,000. And all of these guys have the potential to medal at every single major championships. So you're talking about these significant benefits, and of course there's a hefty pension plan as well. That once they are completed in their journeys of representing Turkey, they will be beneficiaries of pension plans that will tide them over for the rest of their lives. So, those are benefits that they're not getting in Jamaica. So, that's what it is.
Way more than they would ever be able to get if they represent Jamaica. But we note that the agent who was involved in these transactions was keen to point out that they're not interested in affecting our sprinters. They're not targeting the sprinters. It's more like pretty much like the field events and so on. It seems that they were going after. But I wanted to ask.
No. They actually approached a couple of our sprinters.
Oh, really?
Too. And the word is that they're coming back.
Really?
Yes. And based on what the word is on the ground, and the word on the ground is pretty solid in terms of, because there are several journalists here that are aware of what that situation is. There are several Jamaican athletes, depending on what happens at these national championships, come this weekend from the 26th to the 29th, could make themselves available to make the switch as well. And Richard, let me just use this opportunity here to explain what's going on. Huh?
Yeah.
A lot of these athletes, it's not even just for the finances alone. The finances are a significant part of it. But people like Wayne Pinnock and Jane Hibbert already also have contracts. They have 2 more contracts. But it's not just the money. It's how they perceive how the J3As respects them and appreciates them and does things to support them. And they don't feel that. I mean, I can tell you from conversations that I've had with a number of these athletes, and not just the ones who have made the switch, is that they don't feel like they're respected by the J3As any at all. And it's not just now, it goes back years. I can tell you this. This is a story that I can share directly, because this is something that I experienced. Jason Morgan, who was back in the mid-2000s, was Jamaica's leading discus thrower, was not selected for a team. I'm trying to remember if it was the 2007 World Championships or the 2009. It was early in that period. I don't remember the exact championships. And I remember he had thrown 68 meters at a meet in Mississippi. And when the team was announced at I think it was at the Hilton Hotel at the time, or Wyndham, I don't remember what it was called at the time because they changed the name so often. I asked Dr. Warren Blake, who was the president of the J3s at that time, why is it that Jason Morgan was not selected? He said to me directly that he doesn't believe in the performances, because whenever Jason throws for Jamaica, he doesn't throw as far. And I'm like, but he threw the mark, and the mark is a qualifying mark. So why would you not have selected who is our best thrower? And this is a consistency with what happened with the J3s. Remember just last year, Naoka Clunis, who qualified for the Olympic Games as a quota athlete, was left off the team, and the J3As claimed that because of the storm that affected the island and internet was interrupted. I had internet. So even if they didn't have it at the J3As headquarters, they could have asked somebody to send in the late entry for them. So it's how they treat with the field event athletes, especially. All of the athletes feel the same, actually. Whether they're track athletes or field athletes. The fact is that the field athletes feel especially aggrieved because of how they're treated by the J3As. Yeah. So it's not just about the money alone. It's the lack thereof of respect, the lack thereof of the perception that the J3As actually cares about their well-being. Well, so it's a combination of issues, primarily affecting the field athlete.
This is obviously a wake-up call. What are you picking up in terms of the reaction of the J3As and even the government through the Ministry of Sports to this matter?
So far, we haven't heard anything definitive from the government. I suspect that we'll hear that eventually. The J3 sent out a very indifferent statement saying that they are, aware of the media reports, and Gosgill told some members of the media that it's still all hearsay because they haven't received any official documentation yet. But we're understanding that the Turkish authorities have already started the process of filing for Roger Stoner's documents, and I suppose the J3 will receive that documentation within the coming days because they have to complete the process by the end of the month. which means that to facilitate the 3-year period through which the process will take place to complete the transfer of allegiance. So they are behaving so far based on what we're seeing is almost as if it's not happening, or there is this perception that, subsequent to Gasgale told, I think it was a Jamaica Observer, that they have reached out to the police and they won't block any moves to Turkey. But what I'm saying to you is that, again, it's a reflection of how the J3 treats with this matter. Because if I was president of the J3, I would have issued a statement saying something along the lines that we regret that these athletes are taking this decision to move on, or something along the line to suggest that there's some kind of
intervention or
empathy,
something. Mm-hmm.
As to understanding the athletes' concerns.
Yeah.
But again, it's almost like this indifference to what's going on, and not understanding that this is opening the door, as I mentioned earlier, to countries like Turkey, to countries like Bahrain, making similar overtures to Jamaican athletes.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the field athletes who feel aggrieved. Not everybody is a Shady and Fraser Price or Usain Bolt or Warren Weir or Johan Blake who have earned significant portions of money during the course of their careers. Some of these athletes are not yet at the level where they're going to attract these major sponsorships and ambassadorial roles that will allow them to then, feather their nest in a way to take care of their futures. So, based on what happens at the national championship this weekend, I think we can all brace for the reality that number of other Jamaican athletes could be making the move to not just Turkey, but to other countries as well.
Wow. And that brings me to my next question, Leighton. Is there anything that can be done government to government? Is Turkey breaking any rule or international law by this heavy recruitment from one country, to the best of your knowledge?
There are no rules that prevent it. The World Athletics guidelines that govern transfers of allegiance have entrenched, directives that there are certain things that Turkey has to uphold to ensure that what they're promising the athletes are delivered. There's a process through which then they will determine. There's a review panel that will look at the cases individually and then make a determination one way or the other. And if the athletes are agreed, and the J3s have no objections, the transfers go through. As to your question as to what the government can do, I think it's a combination of government and private sector and the J3s that can do something significant. Mm-hmm. Let me give you an example. Last summer actually, Adidas made aware offer they made to the J3s that started at about a base of about $3.5 million a year and rises to as high as over $6 million a year. That had in it funds to support athletes, funds to reward athletes for relay medals, funds to upgrade and facilitate new facilities in the country. And they ignored that completely and re-signed with Puma, who my understanding is that deal is not even 50% of what Adidas was offering. So you see, and this is why there's a perception on the ground that the J3 signs these deals not with the athlete's best interest in mind. Look, this is just the perception, as I'm saying. This is not something that we'll be able to establish. But as I said, the perception is often greater than the reality. So what could happen is that, of course, government claims that they don't have the funds to support the athletes. But I find it interesting that government can find funds to do anything they want to do. But when it comes to supporting the athletes, there's always some kind of caveat. The fact is this. There can be something done, but it requires a collaboration between government, private sector, and the J3s that can create funds, that can create systems to generate funds to support these athletes. And look, you're not talking about supporting every single Jamaican athlete, right? Because financially it's not viable to be able to do that. Track and field is a sport where everybody runs, everybody jumps, everybody does everything, everybody throws. The thing is that if you're at the level where you're qualified to represent the country and you qualify to wear the national colors, there should be some kind of system in place where you can get consistent funding You can get support consistently. You can get rewarded for the work that you do for the country. Because a lot of people look at these things and talk about the fact that the government can't afford to pay these athletes because teachers and nurses and doctors need to get paid more, and nobody's disputing that. What they're saying is this, and what the reality is this: the same way in which these doctors and nurses and teachers migrate to other countries for better financial opportunities, similarly, the athletes are doing the same thing. What we can do to keep them here is to be able to put in place a structure around our sports, and it's not just track and field, that provides support for athletes who represent the country, because representing the country is not just about going out there to make us happy and that we can cheer when they win or and commiserate when they fall short of the podium. They're ambassadors, right? They represent the country in a way in which, let me give you an example of how this works. Roger Stoner, for example, is a field eventer.
Yes.
Who Jamaica doesn't normally do well in the field event. He wins the Olympic gold medal. He sets an Olympic record. And what that does is this. When somebody sees that somebody like Roger Stoner do what he did, he's like, well, we didn't know Jamaica produces throwers of that caliber. They go on to Google. They Google Roger Stoner. They look at his history. They say, you might never have heard about Jamaica before. I never had any detail about Jamaica before. And you Google, you realize that Jamaica is a well-known tourist destination. That might generate interest in someone saying, hey, let's go to Jamaica, whether for the cultural element of it or whether for the beaches or whatever it is that attracts them. And they buy tickets to Jamaica. So indirectly, somebody like Roger Stoner excelling at the Olympic Games actually helps our tourism in many ways, because then it has a million eyes on, or a billion eyes on the number of people watching the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And draws additional interest in Jamaica. When Usain Bolt won in 2009, his media market value was estimated at over $300 million US. That's the amount of exposure he got in those 10 seconds, less than 10 seconds, than the tourist board would have spent in 20 years. So you see, it's not just, it's about making the connections as to how these athletes help Jamaica in so many ways, in a way in which what their contribution is actually priceless. So for them to be rewarded is not a fantasy or a pie in the sky idea that we should pay these athletes just to represent Jamaica once or twice a year, or whenever they go on the track, on the field, in a Diamond League or wherever it is, Pan Games or wherever it is, they are representing Jamaica.
Yeah.
And the Jamaican flag and symbol comes up beside their names whenever they're introduced.
Mm-hmm.
It's exposure that we can't pay for. So for those people who are thinking that the only thing that these athletes do is compete, nobody understands how hard these athletes train for these few moments of potential glory. And the work that they put in and the exposure that they give Jamaica as ambassadors has a value. And while the value might be intrinsic in many ways, it does have a value that should be rewarded. And I think, we need to stop thinking about these things as only entertainment or recreation, but also as a business.
As a business,
because
indeed.
This is what these athletes do for a living.
Absolutely. You've said a lot, and I really appreciate your thoughts this morning, Leighton. I hope that, the government and the ministry and the J3As will all get proactive and stop the slide, because if not, then we might very well be losing other of our star athletes. I want to thank you again for your time and your thoughts, and I wish you a great day today, Leighton. Thank you.
You too, guys. Have a great day.
All right. Blessings.